Multitasking is bad for focus. That should surprise no one. But what do you do when your job or your work requires you to switch tasks all day? See, the problem isn't multitasking, it's that modern work is fragmented. There's more inputs every single day. So as people are getting things done faster, there's more cross collaboration and things that you need to react to be aware of, to think about in the course of a modern day. So there's not too many people I know that are working on a single thing despite their best efforts, whether you're a business owner or you're in engineering, products, or design. So instead of saying that interruption is the issue, we could reframe the problem and actually adapt to what modern work is and things that are stopping our focus. And that is not interruption, but context reconstruction. It's re-entering the work. So when you are working on something and you're starting to get deep with it, and then you have to switch gears, it usually takes about 15 to 22 minutes to reconstruct that context to get into that same active state. So I'll give you an example. I just came out of a meeting, right? Let's pretend I just came out of a meeting and we've decided that we're going to take on this new project. We're building this new feature. Typically, what I would do is I would say, okay, let's understand the problem. That means for me, it's going through all of the customer documents, everyone who's ever complained about this problem, trying to understand what they're actually trying to do, see what we've thought about or what we've tried to implement before, any history of it, see if anyone's documented or tried to draft some requirements up for before, and I start gathering all these resources. And 45 minutes go by, about 50 minutes go by, and I'm starting to get in this flow state. I'm starting to see all these connections. I'm starting to see what the design could look like, how we could solve this problem, and like really having a good idea of how we're going to execute on this. Next thing you know, that hour is up and I either have another meeting or an emergency came up that I have to react to, some kind of bug, something that is just going to take my attention. A lot of people deal with that. And what happens and why it's so hard to go back into it is because after that emergency or whatever it is that I had to switch gears for, maybe I have some more space to look at that problem that I was originally working on 2 or 3 hours from now. Before just getting into it, I have to get all of those little pieces and little dots that I had actively connected to try to somehow reconstruct it so it goes back in my brain. So I want you to think of it like this. So whenever you're working on something with any kind of depth, it's almost like your brain is a whiteboard. You start writing some keywords at first, just like, okay, customer complaints, okay, designs. And you just have these different areas that are starting to slowly get filled up on the whiteboard. And as you go, you start seeing connections. You start connecting maybe some dots with the different keywords. And as you really start going, you're really into the flow state and the work that you're consuming, that whiteboard is getting all filled up. But when you get interrupted, that whiteboard gets erased. So that whiteboard is essentially your working memory. That's you having all this context in front of you and connecting dots, and the parts of your brain are just lighting up and working together. So when you switch gears, that gets erased. So now, a couple hours later, you try to go back to that thing and the whiteboard is blank. That trying to rewrite all that and get all of the context back and reconstruct it, that is that 15 to 22 minutes to get back into a task after interruption. So we can recognize that and then say, okay, well, if that is the core issue, what can I do about it? Well, what you could do about it is try not to lose as much context when you're switching gears. And a good way to do this is whenever you're working on a task and you have to switch for whatever reason, the best thing you could do is leave something called a breadcrumb, something that allows you to link up to some of those active connections you're making so it's easier to get back in there. So for this example, I might write, okay, you know, I am putting all this together for a feature. I could write reviewed customer documentation. When I come back, I want to put together all the customer complaints into a singular pain point or framing. That's just enough of a breadcrumb where I went back into it, A few hours later, I can go back and say, okay, I was looking at customer complaints and I said I was going to do this. Not only is my first micro step assigned to me, but I have a trail, and also I can remember some of the things I was working on, where I was at in that process, so I don't have to come back to a blank slate. So that's the little insight that I want you to hang on to, and you can try next time. So multitasking is inefficient. Great. That's not the real problem. The real problem is modern work. And what I'm building around is, how do we maintain that snapshot of what we're focusing on throughout the course of the day? Let's say you have a project on Monday and you can't get back to that deep work until Thursday or next week. What we want to do is be able to retrieve that snapshot in a way that gives us enough information to reconstruct and get back into it quickly. Most productivity tools are trying to solve workflows and try to systemize things, and that makes it real hard because we all have different workflows. So I think the key here is really to have something that is adaptable, flexible, and solves the problem itself. How do you retain that context and be able to quickly go back into it as you switch gears? So hey, I'm Rob. I'm building around this. It's called PrecisionFlow, and feel free to check it out in the link below.